But I think we can move on to I think what is easily the best one out of this three, and that is Time Paradox Ghostwriter.
Yeah, I think it definitely has the most standout premise and definitely hooks you to really wanting to know where it goes next. This comes, again, from artist Sunehiro Date, who read much beloved series on this podcast, Cross Account. But they're not writing the story this time, so maybe that's the reason why it's a lot more enjoyable. Kenji Ichima is writing this one. I couldn't find too much about their former work. They might be a newbie, but yeah, basically the premise of this one is about a struggling manga artist called Teppei Sasaki. He's 24. He's going to become 25 soon. He's very desperate to make the next serialization round, but his work keeps getting rejected by his editor for not being very interesting, for lacking originality, and he just doesn't know what to do or how to change it. His idea is that he wants to make work that other people will enjoy, and that just seems to be his whole mentality, his whole focus. And he's kind of at his wit's end after being rejected by his editor and harshly criticized about, if you just want to get complimented, go back home. And that kind of wrecks him because he's thinking about his life experiences and his struggle. And, he's kind of at his wit's end and about to give up. But then lightning strikes his home and it kind of fuses this robot toy that his friend gave him a long time ago called Mirai to his microwave and refrigerator. And this creates some sort of time machine that spits out Shonen Jump issues from 10 years in the future, and he reads the new series on the cover of the Shonen Jump issue from 2030 called White Knight by Itsuki Aino, and he's blown away by it. He thinks that the premise is really interesting, the characters are really compelling, and so he goes out and screams about that to them in the rain as lightning is falling because he's just so moved that he wants to go back and read it again, but the comic is gone, and he's like, oh man, was it just a dream, a hallucination? But then he thinks, oh wait, even if it was, I know this story, and I know this is a great story, so he decides to draw it himself, and he reimagines that first chapter as his own one-shot, and he goes back to Jump editorial, and manages to make enough of a fuss that the editor-in-chief of Jump decides to take a look at it, and he thinks it's really good, and has it published in the next issue of Jump, and that allows him to get a green light to do series, and it seems like things are really picking up in his career, but then when the issue comes out, the artist that would eventually go on to create that series in the future, Itsuki Aina, she reads her story being published in Jump and is confused about it, and then sees that it was co-opted by Teppei, and so now that's where the first chapter leaves off, and I guess we'll see what sort of conflict will arise from here between Teppei and Itsuki.
Oh yeah, this was a really good first chapter.
Yeah, it was quite compelling, and the premise is very, very interesting. There's a lot of mystery elements to it. There's a, sci-fi element. I'm very curious to see, how the conflict between, again, Itsuki and Teppei will go. Will they compete by doing series in Jump? Will Itsuki try to sue Teppei? I'm very curious. I imagine that there's going to be some element of it that'll lead into, some sort of romance thing, which is not the most interesting conflict in my mind, but I think that there is a lot of potential there in terms of he's not drawing his own story. So what happens when he has to go to series and actually expand on this story? Because that's kind of the interesting thing about this character is that, his whole idea, he clearly loves drawing manga, creating art, and he's incredibly good at it. He does the insane thing of drawing a new 47-page one-shot within 24 hours to show to his editor.
Oh, yeah.
Which is crazy. That if you break that down, that's he drew a page every freaking half hour, and that's being generous and saying that he had a full 24 hours. That is crazy. That is insane. He's an incredible artist, clearly are incredibly passionate. But what he lacks is that he doesn't really have, like, a story he wants to tell. And that's what his editor is trying to tell him. It's like, write something that has your voice in it. You're just regurgitating, like, stories you think will be popular. Things that you think other people will like. You gotta find, like, the story that only you can tell. But he's not really getting this, no matter how many times, like, his editor is, like, saying this. And he's just taking it personally and thinking, no, I just gotta keep trying hard. Have to try and make it something that my editor likes. And so he takes his editor's advice and just goes a completely wrong direction in it. When his editor says that the characters were boring, like, he decided to just make them unique and quirky. But as his editor says, like, that doesn't make them interesting.
Yeah.
And you didn't even go that far into making them weird and different. So I think that there's a really interesting idea behind Teppei's character, and that he is so focused on just succeeding and just making something other people like. He's not focused on telling his own story, on drawing and writing what he cares about, what he likes. And he's just not getting this, what his editor is trying to tell him, and telling him that is what people want to read. People want to read something that clearly has the author's voice behind it, not just something that they're just trying to sell to them. So I'm curious to see when he's going to have that realization, especially now, I'm sure, like, he's going to read and try and regurgitate the stories that he reads in the future Jump issues, and we'll see how that turns out. But basically, it's just plagiarized someone else's story so far. So I think the key to his character arc is seeing him finally get to the point where he knows how to tell his own story and is comfortable in that, and not so focused on the attention of other people and living up to a metric of success, and this catastrophizing this idea, oh, I'm not a success yet, and so, I will quit if I don't get in this time. Like, if I turn 25 and I'm not published in Jump, I'll quit. And I think that is one of the interesting things to me that, like, makes me empathize with the character, but I don't quite like him, is that he's, like, pushing his own frustrations off on other people. Like, he calls his editor and tells him, if you don't see my one-shot today, I will quit drawing manga. And his editor's like, what? Don't put that on me. Like, if you want to quit. That is not my fault. That is not my problem.
Yeah.
And so, I think he needs to learn not to just be so obsessed with validation, and just be focused on making the art he wants to make and the stories he wants to write.
I think you put it pretty succinctly. I just like the way that the story beats are handled in this chapter. Like, I think despite his foibles and how he goes about his work and everything, like you were saying, I still found him very sympathetic.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Even if his work isn't, like, good, like, I could still get behind him, and I still felt like, man, I really want this guy to, like, succeed, or I just want this guy to get a break or something. Because we see his journey, from, going to a specific manga art school to getting his own place to... And we see his living conditions. Like, this guy has it really tough. And I think it really beautifully leads up, honestly, to that inciting incident where lightning strikes his house and whatnot. And
this is he's about to say, I quit. And, that is a really compelling hook. And it speaks to something that's true to life, and that is incredibly hard to succeed as an artist. And I definitely resonated with his character in that regard, because, he's so incredibly passionate. He loves drawing. He really wants to be a mangaka, and he has gone on this journey, but he's just not finding the success he wants. And he constantly feels pressure to be in this place that, if he doesn't succeed, he'll have to quit. Like, it is a struggle to keep working at something and not see the results pay off. And as, like, the opening chapter kind of monologue states, a lot of people, they have dreams, but few actually put in the effort to, seize those dreams, and few people, even then, who stretch to reach for that dream actually reach it. And so that is like something that is very interesting to think about and put out there as like the premise for the series. And I think that, again, in terms of finding a voice, seeing the voice from the author, like I could totally see a lot of maybe the author's own personal feelings, frustrations, like being explored in this work. And like this feeling of being an artist who has not really found the success they want and just struggling. And yeah, I really resonate with that. I find that really compelling. I think that's like a lot of what has made this first chapter had such a strong emotional grounding, is that it is based in something really real and really relatable, especially if you're, an artist. And yeah, I mean, again, I think that Tepe's character is really interesting, even though, like, again, it's very frustrating how he so clearly does not get what his editor is telling him, but I think that's where the character arc is, and I think it's going to be an interesting one when he works towards realizing, like, what is the story only he can draw and tell.
Yeah, hopefully at the end of all this, I'm hoping, that this series is going to lean into the more sci-fi heavy elements with the with all this, time travel and whatnot. I'm hoping maybe we'll lean into that and, he'll go on some kind of adventure maybe that'll like hopefully influence him in his work to create something, again, only he can create. Just something interesting, something with his, something that is kind of a part of him. Like a lot of my favorite manga personally are, from artists who are able to put pieces of themselves in their work. And like, I feel like the mark of a good series is a series where you can kind of like get like some kind of read on the person or the people behind the work, and like, people who like take their specific interests and kind of like use that in their work somehow. Like, I find that kind of stuff really interesting. So, maybe he'll learn to do something like that with his work. I don't know. But, yeah, I'm really interested in like where the time travel aspect is going to go. Because as of right now, I can't really make a prediction, unfortunately. But like, I'm very ready for Bakuman with time travel. But hopefully this will be better than Bakuman. Not that Bakuman was all the way bad, but I'm hoping this won't have the same issues that we've had with Bakuman.
There's no sexism or misogyny in this first chapter, so already it's off to a better start than Bakuman or Cross Accounts. So that is a good sign, and hopefully Itsuki Aina is a well-written, respected character and has her own very interesting arc, because I'm very interested in her, because here is a person, clearly, who loves Jump. We see inside her room, and her walls are adorned with issues are shown in Jump. She clearly loves it, and we see like on her floor like sketches of stories that she's writing and drawing, and so she sees in this issue of Jump that her story that she's been working on, like, that has been co-opted by someone else and stolen. Yeah, you would be really mad at that something that you care about, that you've been working hard at, has been taken by someone else. And so I'm curious to see what she's gonna do and like what the conflict between them will lead. And I think ideally maybe they'd work together on White Knight.
Probably.
I mean, that could be an interesting direction to take it, but otherwise, they could compete against each other. And in competing against her and her own story, he might realize, I can take these ideas from this other person, but then it's so clear that like my voice does not come across in just regurgitating someone else's story as it does in like her own original story. And so that could be an interesting angle. Like, I'm very, very curious about like what the relationship and conflict between these two characters is going to be like.
I think unless he teams up with Itsuki, I don't see White Knight lasting too long in Jump.
Yeah.
I feel like he is going to run into that problem of this idea not being, 100% his very quickly.
Yeah. If he can only tell someone else's story and just repeat that, he's not going to get anywhere with it. But there is an interesting angle to it that, even if he's telling someone else's story, he could be putting his own artistic spin on it in the same way that, Yusuke Murata retells One Punch Man with his own flair. So there's also that angle of collaboration that could bring out, what his best qualities as an artist are. So that could be another cool angle. Like, there's a lot of potential and cool opportunities to this, and personally, I'm not as interested in the sci-fi angle of it so much as the relationships between characters and what the series is ultimately going to have to say about art and artists and the struggle of creating art. So that is what I think is like the most compelling hook, and where I'm really interested to see the series explore and go further with in future chapters.
Oh no, I definitely don't disagree. When I mentioned the sci-fi stuff earlier, I just meant that I guess I'm wondering whether this is just gonna be like a one-time thing, or if like we'll find out more about like, why he's getting jumps from the future.
Maybe there's a reason behind it. That could be interesting. But yeah, I mean, he's clearly getting more jumps from the future. The microwave's continuing to spit him out, so that'll be interesting. But it's also interesting that the issue that he had, like, disappeared when he went back to find it. So why are they temporary? There are a lot of mysteries. There is a mystery element to the sci-fi element in this that would be curious to see, like, what the logic reasoning behind is.
Yeah, I'm very interested in finding out, like, why this is happening. I think this is basically a combination of, Bakuman Back to the Future, almost.
I've seen a lot of people compare it as a cross between Bakuman and Steins Gate. I think there's
That's
also an element in Steins Gate about, like, a microwave that affects time, too.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, that comparison's a lot better, actually. But, I mean, I'm definitely going to keep reading more of this. This is probably one of the stronger first chapters I've read in a while, so I would definitely put this up there with stuff like, the first chapter of My Hero Academia for sure, and other first chapters of that quality in writing, so.
Yeah, I definitely think that this was really compelling, and it definitely was a first chapter that left me feeling, oh man, I want to see where this goes. The most out of any first chapter recently. Like, there've been first chapters I've enjoyed recently, but this is one of the rare few that makes me go, oh, I want to read where this goes ASAP. Like, I'm really interested in where the story is heading.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good marker that hopefully the rest is going to be really good afterwards, so. But, yeah,